I'm Lena, I'm in section 12.
I'm Jazara, I'm in section 13.
We're going to be doing a candy salad and a chip salad for our video.
Based on her poem on being brought from Africa to America, how does Phyllis Whitley feel about her homeland of Africa and America?
Well, from her poem, it can be determined that Phyllis Wheatley did not think fondly or highly of her homeland, Africa. In her poem, On Being Brought from Africa to America, the very first line, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land." The land she refers to is Africa. In this context, pagan refers to any other religion than the organized religions, like most polytheistic religions. However, she describes her deliverance to America despite being an enslaved person as mercy, showing an appreciation to the country. And I brought Nerds Gummy Clusters. Okay. Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, there it is.
Maybe I just.
Okay. How does Jupiter Hammond in his poem and address to Miss Phyllis Wheatley view Africans being brought to America?
In an address to Miss Phyllis Wheatley, Jupiter Hammond sees Africans being brought in America as something connected to God's plan. He said God's tender mercy brought thee here, meaning that even though slavery was painful and unfair, he believed it gave Africans the chance to learn about Christianity. Hammond thought knowing God and gaining salvation was more important than the suffering they went through on earth. And I brought marshmallows.
She's gonna like these bloopers.
Okay.
That's lovely.
All right.
Next question. How does Phyllis Wheatley describe her race within her poem On Being Brought from Africa to America?
In her poem, Wheatley describes her race as a stable one that is viewed with scornful eye, with the line, "Some view our stable race with scornful eye." In the lines, "Remember Christians, Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train," she insinuates that Negroes are inherently unpure and must work to be refined based on that fact, and only then might they be granted a place in heaven, placing them lower than others. And I brought Dynamites.
In his poem, An Address to Miss Phyllis Wheatley, in stanza In his poem, An Address to Miss Phyllis Wheatley, in stanza 9, 13, and 16, what advice does Hammond give to Wheatley? Why do you suppose Hammond suggests this advice to Wheatley?
In stanzas 9, 13, and 16, Hammond tells Wheatley to stay humble, keep her faith strong, and always use her writing to honor God. For example, he tells her to seek the living God and find joy in trusting him. His advice shows that he believed being faithful and humble was more valuable than chasing after fame and recognition. He probably gave this advice because during their time it was safer and more accepted for enslaved persons to focus on religion rather than openly fight against prejudice. Hey. And I brought Tashidos.
Hi, my name is Sadasia Hudson, and I am in section 13.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Hooper, and I am in section 13.
Phillis Wheatley's poem on being brought from Africa to America was published in 1773. What was going on in America and in Wheatley's life during this time period that influenced her poem?
When Phillis Wheatley wrote On Being Brought from Africa to America in 1773, America was about to start the revolution and slavery was still a big thing. She was enslaved, but she was also very educated. And in her poem, she thanks God for her faith by saying, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land." At the same time, she called out racism and reminded people that Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train. Oh, and I brought marshmallows.
She's gonna have a laugh. Alright. Number 6. Jupiter Hammond, let's go here. Both Wheatley and Hammond's poems highlight the Christian faith and the idea of being brought from Africa to America. What are the similarities and differences between how Wheatley and Hammond feel about Christianity and being brought from Africa to America?
Both Wheatley and Hammond highlight Christianity as an important part of their lives, being brought from Africa. For example, Wheatley writes in his poem, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand," which shows that she views her capture as a way to, learn Christianity. Hammond, however, focuses more on the struggles and faith of slavery, saying now is the day of salvation and the accepted time. Oh, seek it now, dear young fellow servants. The similarity between them is that both credit America with introducing them to Christianity. But the main difference is that the tone and how they say it. When Wheatley speaks about his journey to America, he does it with gratitude. When Wheatley speaks about her journey to America, she does it with gratitude, while Hammond is more serious in telling enslaved people to fully live their true Christian self despite their suffering. I brought Starburst.
All right. Jupiter Hammond published an address to Miss Phillis Wheatley in 1778. What was going on in America and in Hammond's life during this time period that influenced his poem?
Jupiter Hammond wrote an address to Miss Phillis Wheatley in 1778 in the middle of the Revolutionary War. He was still enslaved, but he really looked up to Wheatley and her strong faith. In his poem, he encourages her to keep following God by saying, Fairer wisdom's ways are paths of peace, and the blessed Jesus set thee free from every sinful wound." And I brought hot cheesy balls.
Some scholars speculate that Hammond was trying to throw shade at Wheatley in his poem. Some speculate that Hammond was trying to tell Wheatley how to be a true Christian. Do you think this is the case? Why or why not?
Some may think he was criticizing Wheatley, but I think he was more focused on guiding people to a deeper faith. Wheatley's poem says, "Remember, Christian," I'm not going to say that, "black as Cain, may be refined in thy joint angelic train." This shows that her belief is that Christianity offers hope and equality in heaven. However, Hammond stresses over the fact that he needs to be faithful. Writing, If we should ever get to heaven, we shall find nobody to reapproach us for being black or for being slaves. Because of this, I don't think Hammond was throwing shade. He was more so concerned with reminding people, including Wheatley, that Christianity was not just about being introduced to God, but about living a righteous life. I brought lime Cheetos.
What is the main idea of the article Writing Revolution? If you could respond to the author's ideas from this article, what would you say?
I would say that the main idea for the article Writing Revolution is that it just mostly talks about Phillis Wheatley's and Hammond's life, about what they did, the works that they wrote, and the context of what was going on at the time, so the historical significance and who they were as writers. And a quote that describes who they were as writers is,
In paragraph 2, it quotes, both were evangelical writers whose poetry and prose reflected their deep Christian faiths and contributed to larger discussions about liberty and slavery on both sides of the Atlantic. And in paragraph 10, it quoted, their literary accomplishments were extraordinary in the face of a colonial society that widely embraced white supremacist views about the intellectual impurity of Africans.
I think that second quote goes really well with how I would respond to their ideas. They were correct. They gave us the historical context of who they were, their significance, with Phillis Wheatley being the first African American enslaved woman to ever write a book, to publish a book, to have something out there and become famous in her own right. And then with Hammond being a pioneer in black intellectualism and literacy, it's wonderful.
In the video.
Oh. More dynamite. Yay.
And we have 3 marshmallows. The third one out.
What is the main idea from the beginning, middle, and end of the article? Challenge Wheatley's critics.
At first,
What ideas from the author did you find most provocative and why? Did you agree or disagree with the author's ideas?
the article talks about how some critics claim Phillis Wheatley distanced herself from her own people. Later, the author explains that Wheatley actually used her poetry and Christianity as a way to resist slavery within the limits of her time. In the end, the author points out that it's not fair to judge Wheatley by today's standards and stresses that her writing played an important role in the fight against slavery.
I really thought it was interesting how Wheatley used Christianity, even though people used it to defend slavery or as a way to argue for freedom instead. The author says Wheatley used biblical images to preach to the enslaved and to persuade her readers of the injustice of slavery. I agree with the author because she worked with what she had back then and still managed to make a difference. Like O'Neilly points out, to condemn Phillis Wheatley is to condemn all our 18th century forebears. Oh. Hot balls.
The rest of our Cheetos, lime Cheetos,
That fresh air.
which is all.